So, welcome back, everyone, to the next edition of the podcast. This week we have Dave from the team. Alexandra will be joining later. And we have a guest this week, Azren, from... You have a business, Azren.
Yes, I do.
Calgary Language Nerds.
That's
And you've
right.
had
Yeah,
this
Calgary
business,
language nerds in Canada.
and you've had this business for 8.5 years.
Correct. Yeah, 8.5 years of nerding out on languages, teaching people, and yeah, doing what I love.
Also, you are fluent in 5 languages. So
Mm-hmm.
you're fluent in English, Spanish, French, Gujarati, which is a local Indian language, and Mandarin.
Correct.
So Mandarin is, I think, the hardest language in the world to learn, right?
In many ways, yeah, it's quite difficult, especially coming from like an English background, like me, for example. Like it's English is my first language, so yeah, it's quite challenging, I'd say. That's yeah.
And how do you go about learning Mandarin? Because if you look at it on paper, it just looks like some squiggles. I don't know how to describe their alphabet.
So what was easier for me, and for me personally, is I didn't learn to read or write for years. I just focused on the speaking and the listening. So
Okay.
that was a lot more straightforward for me. I remember when I took couple of introductory courses first, Mandarin courses. I remember like the first day I walked into the class and they had the PowerPoint slides and everything with the characters, and I was like, "Whoa, that looks hard." And I decided basically on the spot, yeah, I'm not going to learn those characters for a while. Let's just focus on how it sounds and talking and conversation. And later down the road, I learned to read and everything. Yeah.
So uh, at what point in your learning experience of languages did you decide that you were ready or you wanted to teach other people how to learn languages?
That happened about 8.5 years ago, really. So I used to run a window cleaning franchise. That was for 5.5 years, and that was a chance to learn about business. They had an excellent training program in that franchise, and they would like teach us a lot of really useful skills to run a business. And so I always knew I'd do something with business. I just didn't know what. And then it was about 2016 when I came across an individual named, I think this was the inspiration. There's a couple of people that inspired it actually. One thing I came across was a video called Teen Speaks 20 Languages. And I thought, what? What the heck? And it's about this individual named Tim Donor. If I remember, I don't know if I pronounced his last name right, but I think it's Tim Donor. And he speaks all these languages, these love languages. And I was like, wow, and that led me to discovering a whole world of people that like to learn languages. And I thought, wow, maybe there's a way that I could actually start a business with something with languages. If there's all these people that like to learn them, well, maybe they pay for classes. Oh, maybe there's something there. And so that was um, the initial inspiration, I suppose.
So at the moment, me and Dave are both learning languages. Dave's learning Spanish and I'm learning Portuguese
Cool.
because my wife is Brazilian. Um, and we was in Brazil this year and I literally had zero Portuguese. So I was sat in an awkward position basically. So I thought, oh, next time we go to Brazil, I need to know a bit more.
Totally. Yeah. It's always tough to go to a country and not to speak the language. Like I travel, I mean, just like you guys, you have a travel podcast. I love traveling. I'm a huge traveler and have been for most of my life, really. Um, and it's always a richer cultural experience, even if you just know a little bit of the language of where you're going. I went to Morocco, for example. I don't speak Arabic really at all. But in Morocco, I found this app that taught some of the basics of Moroccan Arabic, and that instantly made it significantly, a significantly richer culture experience, just to know even just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it does help when you go to a restaurant or anything like that, that you know at least hello and please and thank you and the simple words.
hmm
Um,
Especially and then that actually is an exponential curve in many ways. So the more you do know of another language, the richer the more you can experience that local country's culture, customs, the more you can soak all of that in, the deeper your knowledge is of the language, I find.
so your background is that you were born in India, but then you moved to Canada.
I'm actually born in
So,
Canada. So my
are you
family's
born in
got a,
Canada?
yeah, I was born here. My family wasn't born in India for a couple of generations at least. They were actually born in Uganda, but roots are all from India. So they'd gone there, just like immigration and such, right? So they'd moved to Uganda, um, yeah, many years ago, and then in '72, my grandparents came to Canada as refugees, and then after that, my mom grew up. My mom was born in Uganda, but was raised here, and then I'm born and raised here. But roots are all from Gujarat, India, so kind of in the northwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on to Canada. I
Hmm.
was doing some research today, and I found about this. So you do have extreme weather in Canada, like
You could
really
say that,
extremes.
yeah.
So the coldest ever recorded temperature in Calgary is -45, and that was in 1893. So that's a bit irrelevant. But this year, you did have -44
Hmm.
at the start of this year. So how do you find that when it's so cold? You can't leave the house, I'm guessing.
Yeah, when it's -44, we basically stay inside for the most part. I mean, you might have to go out for a short trip, but the thing is, art like I'm in Calgary, hence Calgary Language Nerds business name, because I live here. So in Calgary, for example, our city, I find that our city is built for a certain level of cold. So -20, it's really cold. Well, we can go out, people go to work. There's no major issues. -30, it's not good, but we can do it. Once you start getting to -40, I don't think our city is built for it. So my car, for example, doesn't work properly in -40. The road, like our house starts to make noises. You're like, what is that noise? I hear cracks, and you're like, hope that's not serious. And like our city's just not built for that. That's my opinion that our city doesn't seem to be built for that level of that level of cold. Although from time to time we do have it.
So I'm guessing your job is more, well, it can be, is it face to face or more online, your job?
Nowadays, interestingly, it's more online nowadays. It used to be almost entirely face to face, and COVID sort of changed everything. Even the local people that want to learn, for the basically everyone, will ask for. They will assume it's online. They won't even. They just assume it's over Zoom or whatnot. It's quite interesting, actually.
So that kind of kills my question, but when it is -40 or around there, how do people, obviously they don't go to work, but how do their companies react to that? Like, do they just expect that no one's going to be at work
No, no,
today?
no. People still go to work. We still have to go. I mean, so for example, my mom is a teacher, as an example. She still has to go. We don't have school, at least in my city. We don't really do school closures, and they do it for. I think they do it for safety reasons, because what if the school closes school and a parent misses the memo and kids get sent off and they're kind of dropped off? Like that's not safe. Although it's interesting because other cities I think do school closures. So I'm not sure how they it might just be a city local culture sort of thing, but yeah, like teachers still go to school. People do still go to work, especially when for the type of job where they have to go. Um, so yeah, we just have to go. Dress up warm, leave early, off you go.
So
Azren,
as
can I
well,
ask you what order of language? What was the order of languages you learned? Can we like
Yep.
what
So
was what,
the
your
order would have
native
been,
languages? Good.
yeah. So English is like my first language. At home, I
Okay,
always spoke in Gujarati, although I studied it more formally as an adult. So I would say that language really, in my mind, came much later. So English was the first one. After that was French. I went to French school growing up, French immersion school. Then Spanish started in about high school. After that would have been Mandarin, which happened in 2016. Yeah, 2016. And then Gujarati, my family's language, my home language, I started to actively study that in 2018.
actively studying it, but you sort of
Yeah, so I
grew up with
spoke it
it,
growing up, but I couldn't
right?
read, I couldn't write. I didn't, I spoke my family's dialect, or not dialect, but their variant, let's say, and not,
Right,
a more quote unquote standard variant, I guess you could say.
right. You weren't certified, by any
Bingo.
education to do it.
Yeah, 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 something like
I'll
that,
share a story
something
with
like
you.
that.
Like, yeah, I get that. But did you didn't have to do any interpreting for your family because they were also English speaking. So, wow. So you heard it, like you might have heard a grandparent or like an exterior part of the
Yeah, it's
family
actually an
speaking.
interesting story. So my mom, my mom it was very important to her that I spoke and I learned Gujarati. So in my generation, I might I'm either the only or at least one of the only people that actually speaks the language in my generation. That was just because my mom wanted me to. So my cousins don't, right? My mom wanted me to learn, and so I remember growing up. I actually used to get confused because I would forget who in my family spoke better in English and who was better in Gujarati. So I would address everyone in Gujarati. Some people would be like, Azren, I'm not as good at it. I speak English better, and it was kind of confusing to me to remember who knew what. So I would just always start in Gujarati and just kind of watch the reaction. Then they'd reply in English. Oh, English. Okay, I guess I can do English. Okay.
Right.
So
Are you actually like do you have a certificate now that you are like you teach it, but could you interpret? Could you get a job? We have Elsa. She's one of our co-hosts. She actually, I don't know what languages she does, but she's an interpreter. This is something you could do. You're certified in this type of thing.
not interpretation. No, no.
No, but
So
teaching.
that's a separate skill set, really. Like you can be very fluent in a language. Like you could be
Right.
completely bilingual in English and Spanish, for example, and
Right.
not be able to interpret
Right.
all the
Just
time.
to let
Very
you know,
common.
I grew up with deaf parents. So
Oh,
I grew
interesting.
up. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. You said Gujarati. Am I?
Yeah, yeah, correct. Gujarati, yeah.
So I grew up with sign language, but I knew how to speak it with my mother and father. You know, pretty much. You know, other people too that were deaf, but hungry, cold, tired, TV, food, friends, play, toys. You know, the language as a child. You know, but and I did do some interpretation for my mother and father because my father sort of ran a business, so he would take me with him to speak
Hmm.
to hearing people. So at the age of like 6. I jokingly say I was the golden boy of sign language at the age of
Oh,
6 years old.
interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was in adult situations all the time. So that's why I asked you about your
So,
situation, but you
yeah,
didn't have.
so
Go
that was
ahead.
interesting. So I didn't have to do what interesting. So yeah, when I was growing up, I didn't have to interpret for anyone. In fact, my mom was better at English than Gujarati, but she wanted me to. She speaks Gujarati very well, obviously, but
Right,
like you can't grow up with a Gujarati household without speaking it very well, obviously.
right,
But
right,
English is her first language, is her strongest language.
right.
Um, so I didn't have to interpret for her. Her grandparents speak English perfectly well. Like the entire family speaks English perfectly well.
Okay.
Um, but growing up, my mom just really made that a focus for me. Like, and told the entire family, like Gujarati is the language that you will speak with him, and that was just probably at least for the first 10 to 12 years of my life. Let's say it was pretty consistent.
The neighborhood you grew up in were there others that spoke it as well, or were you like it was your family? You know.
No, just mostly family, friends for the most part, not in the neighborhood. So,
Hmm,
we have a big family, so we got to practice lots of people in the family, but
yeah.
yeah, not the neighborhood though. No, not mine.
Look, let me just ask one more question. How did your family end up in Calgary? It just seems like, like listen, my mother immigrated during World War II or just before World War II from Poland, from Warsaw. She avoided the concentration camps and all that. So they ended up off the boat, Ellis Island, and then Lower Manhattan, which is very typical. It's a very typical Jewish immigration story. But when I hear about all these other people ending up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, or Calgary, or like, how do you get off the boat? And maybe that's wrong to assume that there was a boat. Could have been an airplane. It all depends what time period. But it's like, how does anybody say Calgary?
Yeah,
Edmonton,
frankly,
even
I don't
further
know
away.
how Calgary specifically. I actually don't know about why it was Calgary specifically. That I don't know.
Yeah,
But what I do know is that in 72 there was a dictator named Idi Amin in Uganda.
yeah,
He based
hmm
essentially, yeah, so if you guys know that. So he basically
right,
essentially kicked all the Indians out, and then my family, now all my family is essentially, there's a lot of them that came to Calgary. A lot of them are in the UK right now. Some of them in the US. We have some in India as well, quite a bit,
yeah.
but everyone
I
sort
would
of
think
went.
I would think that's where you would go. You would end up in Calgary out of all. I mean, listen, nothing against Calgary. I don't know anything about Calgary. I know there's a hockey team, whatever, the
Yeah,
Flames or whatever.
I
But
don't know if this is the case, but I would wonder if one of the reasons was that who's accepting refugees.
okay, there you go.
That's
All right.
that's definitely one of the factors. Now I don't know
If you could do
beyond
me a
that.
favor, find out.
Yeah, my grandpa wasn't. He has was just listening to it the other day, actually, just was interested, I was watching part of it. Um, he has a story about different lineups to get paperwork and stuff approved and everything to leave. And so
Mm.
he'd seen that the Canada line was just kind of shorter, and so he went into that line, and he has a story like that. But
That would be a
Calgary
humorous.
specifically, I don't know specifically the city. I wouldn't be shocked if they weren't able to pick their city.
That they didn't, or they did.
That they, I wouldn't be, and I'm just speaking, just guessing. I wouldn't be
Right.
shocked if they weren't able to pick. If you weren't able to
They
pick.
weren't able to, right?
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, my
Yeah.
mother's name apparently wasn't Sonia; it was Sarah, or some other name, and they changed it at right there on the line. So they either changed
Your
it for
mother's
her,
name, you
or
said.
yeah, her original
Okay.
name was not Sonia. So yeah, that whole immigration process to me, I'm not an immigration nerd, but I'm more of a location nerd. So I appreciate your language nerd. So, but all these things that if you asked your parents, and I asked my mom and dad, they're no longer alive. But when I did have those conversations, it's always like sketchy because it's hard to remember when you're a child. It's a traumatic experience coming over the boat, over the Atlantic Ocean. And, it's not a Carnival Princess cruise, it's not a Disney cruise. It's a freighter that was converted, whatever it is. It's just not great conditions. And then you get to Ellis Island, and if you have a cold, they turn you around. If you were sick, they turned you around. Because I just took the Ellis Island tour. So yeah, it's a lot there. So anyway, I didn't mean to get us off track, but I find it fascinating that when people end up from other countries. So I remember Idi Amin, the dictator. It was horrible, but I didn't know he threw people out. And to end up in Calgary, it would be kind of humorous if, they went to the shortest line because it just was, we had a time crunch. We just can't do it.
Well, yeah,
you know what I'm
because there were ridiculously long lines. So my grandpa, he's told the story to me a number of times where, they would just he was driving to work, and he just sort of saw one day the line was shorter than usual, so he just
Right.
decided to go.
Right. Thanks, Luke.
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt.
So again, I'm back onto weather. I was looking at. I know that Canada is pretty cold all throughout Canada, but Calgary has the most amount of sun from any major city in Canada.
Mhm.
It has on average 104 days a year of sunshine.
Sounds about right.
I also read as well that you have some bad hailstorms storms as well. Big hailstones, bowling ball size. They
Well,
can be.
maybe not bowling ball, but yeah. But yeah, we definitely we definitely can get some pretty big hailstorms, and houses can get hail damage for sure. Whether it's, regular sized hail that doesn't cause damage, or of course, bowling ball would be something else. But, someone up there is not happy
Yeah.
with Calgary if that's happening. But
Yeah. Yeah. You're 3 hours south, according to this. I'm looking at Google Maps. You're 3 hours south of Edmonton.
correct.
Is that really like a totally different environment? Have you I'm assuming you've been there, you visited,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But is that like a totally different environment 3 hours to the north of you?
Environment in what way?
Whether it's weather, well, obviously it's a different city. Is it a different culture? Is it a totally different population or a different way of life?
Not crazy different, frankly, based on my experience. It's not crazy different based on my experience. I would say a couple of fun facts, some local facts for you. So, Calgarians have a rivalry with Edmonton. It's probably based on our hockey teams, so I had to guess where it originates.
Right.
But the funny
Right.
thing is that frequently, if you talk to people from Edmonton, they have no beef with us. They have no rivalry with us. It's a kind of a one-sided rivalry in many ways, but I think it's quite funny. Like, we'll call them Deadmonton and stuff like that instead of Edmonton. And then if we talk to someone from there, they're like, "Yeah, we don't know why you hate us. Like, we're cool with you guys. Why do you guys not like us?" It's just pretty comical. Although the
Very
hockey
odd.
teams definitely are rivals.
Sure. Oh yeah, forever. And
Yeah.
so Dedmonton, that's funny. We do the same thing in New York. It's like the Mets versus the Yankees. I don't know if you know about baseball here in the United States, but Met fans hate Yankee fans.
Mhm.
Yankee fans could care less about Met fans because the Yankees have 26 World Series, World Championships. They have all the rings, whatever you want to call it. They've won everything. They've done it all. They've had all the greatest baseball players in the world. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, you just go on and on. The Mets have had like 5, whatever. They have they're always the underdog, and they're always, even now, they spend so much money, they just can't seem to win. So there's always that thing of hate. And the Yankee fans, if you listen to sports radio in New York, it's Met fans constantly complaining about the Yankees spending too much money, and the Yankee fans could care less about the Mets. Like, we don't even realize, oh, is there still another baseball team across the river? They just don't care. But that happens all across the world. Rivalries are great. I'm a rivalry nerd. I'm gonna be using this running joke for the rest of the show.
You like rivalries, location nerd, and rivalry nerd.
Yes. I mean, come on, that's good stuff. It's just it's interesting how people behave. I never heard the term Deadmonton, but I could see it. And the reason why I asked is different because if I see where I live, I'm just south of Albany, New York. I don't know if you know where Albany is.
I don't.
If you go 3 hours, 2 hours to the west is Syracuse, and then after that is Rochester, and then Buffalo, and they get all that lake effect snow. They get lake effect weather.
Oh yeah.
That's why I asked you about Edmonton. Because
So
Edmonton's
actually, we don't have a lake effect. What we do have, though, we have something called I don't know if we're the only city. We must be. I don't actually know, but Calgary has what's called a Chinook. So we're close to the Rocky Mountains. And
Yeah,
so what
I saw
happens
that.
is we get like a warm wind in the winter that warms up for a week or something, or a few days. It's pretty windy during those days, but it could be 20 below, and then it's suddenly 10 above zero. So you're looking at whatever that is Fahrenheit if you're in the US, so 40-ish, 45, something like that. It could be like 28. No, well, sorry, minus 20 is going to be like minus 10 Fahrenheit, something like that. And then next thing you know, we're at 40 degrees for that's because of this warm wind that comes to the mountains. But that doesn't happen, for example, at Edmonton, as an example.
Right. You mean Jasper National Park? Is that the
Quite
Rockies
close
you're
to
referring
Jasper.
to?
Yeah. Quite close to there. Yep.
Because I'm looking at the map here on Google Maps, and to your west is this park. Oh, Banff. Is that what it is? Banff National Park. Okay. All right. So is that your Rockies when you refer to the Rockies?
That's where the Rocky Mountain. That's like one town that's like probably the most well-known town in the Rockies. Yeah.
A little temperature fluctuation. Okay. There you go. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a weather
nerd
too.
About Chinooks as well. I was reading about Chinooks in like the different. In 1 second it's minus 20, the next it's plus 10, and that quick turnaround in weather that can make people ill, right? That
Some
makes
people,
ill.
Some people get headaches and such. Some people, it can happen.
Azren, tell me as a child, when was you have a recollection of the first what was your earliest recollection of language? This is interesting. Language.
There's two that come to mind. So growing up, I always had somewhat of an interest in language. It wasn't a huge interest, but I'd be interested. For example, in Gujarati, we have 2 sounds that sound kind of similar, but they're kind of not, and I always thought that's kind of interesting.
Can you share that with us? Is that
yeah. So there's like one which is like ara, and one that's ana, one that's more nasal, one that's not nasal. It's kind of the same thing, but one's in your nose, one's not. And I always thought it's kind of interesting. But really when it actually started was when I was 15. I went to very, very rural France for 3 months alone as an exchange student. I was in a tiny hamlet. Went to school in a town, nearby town. Everyone in that school in the town kind of came from nearby villages. It was kind of the biggest town in the area. I was there for 3 months, and then that was where it all started. I came back. I was much better at French. I liked French now. I always spoke French even before that, but I was significantly better after coming back. I started to learn Spanish. I had a great Spanish teacher. All my friends were in the class. It was a great, lovely time. I enjoyed learning Spanish. So then when it came time to go to university, I thought, well, I don't really know what I want to study. I don't know what I want to do for work, but all I know is that the only thing I know that I like is French and Spanish and language. Turns out there's a French and Spanish degree. And that's what I did. And so 15 was when it really started. And I already liked traveling before then. Traveling is already part of my life. 15 is when I started to travel alone. Basically when I was 15 is when that essentially started, traveling alone and picking my own trips and such.
So at 15, you're in high school?
Yep.
High school. That's like a sophomore, junior. Like that's your first year.
Yeah, you'd be
15,
a freshman
16,
in high school, yeah.
Was a freshman, all
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you went with other students, or did you go by yourself?
It was an exchange trip, so I didn't have other students specifically with me. There were other students that went, but everyone went to different parts of the country. So I somehow had one guy in my town. It's rather, he went to school in the town where I went to school to, and he was in my school, but I didn't know him. And he was in my class, but we didn't know each other. And that was just a
Wow.
random coincidence that no one else got. That's just happened quite randomly. And really, it was in the middle of nowhere. So the fact
Yeah.
that it happened is quite remarkable.
So 15, I mean, that's a big trip. Your parents, and can we discuss that real quickly? Is this something you discovered? It was offered to you? Were you in a private school, a public school?
Nope,
15
public
is
school.
really public school. Wow. In Calgary.
Public school, they had a partnership with an organization that I think is still around today. I think they
Okay.
changed their name, but there's an organization that had a partnership with the public school system. You had to pay for it. It was not I can't remember how much it was, but it wasn't a completely unreasonable amount of money. And
You got
yeah, so
lodging,
then
you got
my
food.
mom forced me to go. I didn't want to go.
Oh, you didn't want to go.
No, I didn't want to go. My mom forced me to go. It was 3 months. I was like, kind of scared to be alone and away from home and all that for 3 months. It's a long time, 3 months, right?
Yeah, I thought in my head, I'm thinking you wanted to go, and now you took language and travel, and that's it. Like, this is your,
That's where it hit, but I didn't know before then.
you didn't know.
I was forced, and then I mean, even there, I would say in part it started there, but it was probably more afterward. I thought, wow, that was a really wonderful experience. I want to try that again. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. And ever since then, except for COVID years, basically every year, I spent 1 to 3 months. I spend 1 to 3 months somewhere else, and I'll go alone. Almost always, I'll travel alone. I will try to find someone to live with, if I can. So it won't be a hostel or anything. I will find a family who's like, hey, yeah, we'll take you for 2 months, and I'll live with them. And
Had you
it's
been-
always
you-
like an extreme personal growth experience.
Yeah, I can imagine 15. I mean, I've taken buses and trains in New York City, but I never flew across the ocean. I'm assuming you flew. I don't know.
No boats to France.
No boats to France. So you're flying and you're living in some rural, out of the place, And is Calgary a French Canadian?
No,
Oh,
no,
it's not.
quite the opposite, really.
Really? Because Montreal is French Canadian, and they have rules about they preserve
They
their
do
French.
preserve it.
But you already had a background to a certain extent in French. You didn't just go there and learn it.
I mean,
Wow.
I had like a low intermediate level before going, something like that.
Wow. So so you didn't want to go.
No.
You expressed that very clearly to Mom. I don't
Oh
want to
yeah,
go.
yeah.
And
Mom's
you
like,
had
no, you should go on this. Like, this is a good experience.
Fear of flight or fear of strange?
No, I think it was fear of being away from home, living with the people I don't know in a new place, and away from my school, away from friends, like away from everything, away from the family, like all the home comforts, and like all just away from all that in a
Mom's
completely
food.
novel environment.
Yeah, Mom's food. You're away from Mom's food,
Yeah,
right?
away from all of it, like all of it.
All
Yeah.
of it. And you lived with a family.
Yeah.
You didn't live they didn't put you up in a hotel where all these kids are running around like crazy. You were at somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Are you still in touch with those people?
I am
Do you know
actually.
who-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Last
how
time I
long-
visited them, and when was the last time I visited? I went in 2019. So before COVID is when I went to visit.
Wow. That's great. That's so how long did it take from the minute you got on the plane or however to the moment you went, well, I guess this isn't so bad? Or you had to wait till you get back and you had to-
That's actually a good question. Probably. I mean, it's a complicated. I mean, it's a complicated question because the what I liked about the trip was, see, every day was actually quite challenging. Like it was very challenging, probably every day, and it wasn't fun in the traditional sense of the word. It was just a remarkable learning experience. So, for
Right.
example, I grew up in a city, right?
Mhm.
Calgary is a city. Now I'm living in rural France, where it's all night and day difference. There's
Farm.
4 people your age in the town. Those are now your friends because they're the only people that are your age. They all bike everywhere. They're building tree houses. They're having picnics in the dark. They're running across some neighbor's farm when they're not supposed to. They're exploring caves. They're getting stung by the nettle plant, and I got bumps on my hand. And they would whistle like this with the fingers in their mouth to see if to check if someone's home, and you whistle and you kind of wait for the whistle back. But I didn't know how to whistle that way, so I had to learn in order to be able to like communicate. Like there's like you bike on the highway to the neighboring town to watch a movie, and then your bike doesn't have brakes, but they have their own system for how to not fall off. And I'm like, I'm not even that strong on a bike, and like
No brakes.
everything was challenging. And then there's a language barrier, of course, and like every day was remarkably difficult, but very positive because you're growing from it. So I don't know if there's a point where it's like, oh, now I'm having fun, because I don't think it was fun is not the word I would just use to describe any of my trips, frankly. They're not necessarily fun in the traditional sense of the word.
I get it. I get it. So there was 4 kids, and they were already there. These are
They're
exchange.
French. They live there. They're born in the
They live
village.
there.
There's Louise. There's like this. I know their name. I still remember them. They're the only 4 people my age in the village. So they're your friends.
And you had to ride somebody else's bike because you didn't bring your bike.
Oh, of course not.
Right.
No, yeah.
Right. Wow. So you had some. All right. So you had a man and a woman. Was it a family?
That I lived with?
This house, the one that you went to, this exchange.
Yeah.
There was a mom and a dad.
So mom, dad, my exchange student. He lived in our house too. He'd come here first, in fact. So his mom, dad, the exchange student, and then his older sister.
Oh wow. All right. And then somehow you meet and you go to school somewhere, or you're studying with them.
No, you go to school. So I went to high school in the neighboring town, basically.
Neighboring town. And how did you get to that school?
That was true. We got a ride. We got driven by, just driven.
Okay. So a school bus, or somebody drove you?
No, there was a bus on. I'm trying to remember. I think in the mornings we'd get driven by the neighbor. The neighbor would drive us to school because she went to the same school, and then I think some days were picked up and some days was a bus.
Okay.
And their school hours were generally longer than they are here. So like I think the long days we came in the bus, and then some of the days that ended a bit shorter we got picked up. It depended on what day of the week it was.
Right. Wow. And somehow you meet these 4 kids, and then you just got the lay of the land. You're biking, you're doing this, you're doing that, and you're causing trouble. And did you get into trouble? Did you ever get into trouble?
Oh, I got in trouble for all sorts of silly things though, like not stuff that not the typical things. Like that's the thing about culture shock, which happens when you travel somewhere, is that the smallest things, especially when you live in someone's home, you get their home culture, and you get the home culture shock, not the country, but just that home or the village. Or so one thing that in my household when I was growing up, if I came down the stairs as an example in the morning, it wasn't incumbent upon me to say, oh, good morning, how'd you sleep? None of that. Like I could probably just ignore my mom, or she could ignore me. Like initially, we don't have to necessarily say hello every time. Well, maybe we did, maybe, I don't know. We didn't think about it.
Right.
But in this household, for example, they did. And so they would always, even in the morning, they'd say, oh, hi, how are you? How'd you sleep? They kind of had this little exchange they would do. And I didn't do that. And they were quite shocked by it. Like, how could you not do that? So for them, it was a shock because they're not used to someone not doing that. For me, the shock's like, oh, what? And that was a conflict, not a conflict, but something we had to resolve. They're like, hey, look, why don't you say hi in the morning? It's like, what? What do you mean? Why don't I say hi? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
We don't say hi. Like, and then it's a whole conversation.
Right. So these people became your mom and dad, basically.
Essentially,
for 90 days.
In many ways, yeah. Essentially, yeah.
And different food and everything. All right, I find that's good about Worldwide Travel Podcast, because this is something we never talked about, Luke. Is an exchange student going from Calgary, to wherever in France, right? There's rural farmland. There's animals, right? There's cows and horses, whatever. There's farms that are growing all this different food.
Sheep. The neighbor had sheep. Yep.
Sheep making some noise. That's always interesting, right? Chickens, roosters, that type of thing, maybe.
Yep. And we all those neighboring, like there's a bunch of neighboring towns, that area that I would go to, like because there's different family members and such, and even lots of just like neighboring little towns and villages, and that I've been to.
And you didn't want to go, and then at some point it became okay. You probably just assimilated.
Like literally, that's how I am. Okay. Like probably the second I landed, I was like, well, I guess I'm here now, and that's so cool.
Do you remember the flight? Do you remember just sitting there going, I don't want to go.
No. That was so the flight actually was interesting because we'd actually I forgot about this until now. Now that you reminded me, I'd forgotten. So the thing is that this organization, I think they're nationwide. At least I think they're nationwide, but they're not just Calgary. Let's just say that.
Right.
And so the first, I think, 2 days, it was all of the people on that batch for the trip across Canada, all on the same flight, all going to Paris. We had 2 days. I think it was 2 days in Paris, kind of doing some touristy stuff.
Right.
And so I was like with all these people that I didn't know, like all from different parts of Canada. It's actually really cool. It was really, really cool. And then from there, then we all went off to our individual areas of France.
And you didn't know where you were going. Like you really didn't. You couldn't have possibly had the big
Yeah, you
picture
have
of.
like a little info pack that tells you a bit about it, but you don't like
Oh,
know. You don't know. No, you can't. And I did know the exchange student because he'd been to Calgary first.
okay,
So that one, I did know
right.
that.
And you were confident you were going back home. You weren't getting.
Yeah,
They weren't
yeah,
getting
of
rid of you.
course.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I
I
could
met
see.
the
I
exchange
could
student.
see.
He lived in my house for 3 months already. At least I
Okay,
knew him. I didn't know his parents and such, but I knew him
okay,
at least. And his
right,
so in a way, it's harder for him first because he came here first. Then he
right,
went
right.
back for 3 months. Then I went after. And so I had the slight comfort of knowing someone, and also that I was also slightly more comfortable because English was already, quite good. Let's say.
That's a fascinating story. I could go on and on about that. It's a lot of questions for a 15-year-old, 3 months, rural, from Calgary, French, kids, bicycles, movies, all that, whatever, eating, going out, Friday, the weekend, curfews, respect, wow, it's water, the whole, whatever. It's just, everything is there. The milk, whatever you eat or drink, and
Yeah,
the
everything
money.
is, and that's the thing about that's what I love about traveling because I travel basically every year. What I love about traveling is not the touristy sites. It's not really.
No,
I usually get forced into going. Like someone will just
yeah,
drag me and I'll go. What I like is all the stuff you mentioned. Like I'm fascinated by the day-to-day life. Like they don't refrigerate their milk in France, which I think is bonkers. Like how do you not refrigerate your milk? Their milk does not need to be refrigerated. It's shelf stable.
to this very day,
I
even
think so. Yeah, last time I was there, same thing. Like they have shelf stable milk, and I think after you open it, you can refrigerate it. But when it's not opened, you can just leave it on the like room temperature.
how does that work?
I have no idea. I honestly have no clue. I think their pasteurization process is different than ours in North America, and possibly in
Fascinating.
the UK. I'm not sure, but
Fascinating. Hey,
Mhm.
Luke, I never heard of that
Well,
in my life.
that would be awful if you had a morning cornflakes with warm milk. It's awful, surely, no? You have
Well,
cold milk
that's the
with
thing about when you
cornflakes.
travel other places and you're just living there. Like you just sort of like, there's so many foods I eat now that I've taught
Hmm.
myself to like so many foods because it's easier just to learn to like it because you have to live. So in France, for example, I learned to like zucchini. I didn't like zucchini before, but the thing is, because of where I live, they eat what's in season for the most part because they grow a
Sure.
lot of their own food. So when it was, like leek season, we had this leek soup every day. Or when it's apple season, they have, I mean, I like apples, but still, they have apple everything. Every day they have so many apples falling. Or like the zucchinis I think zucchini was that winter? I can't remember now. I think it was winter. I don't remember. Anyway, but it's so many zucchinis. I didn't like the beets. They used to eat raw beets as well.
Oh, wow.
And so
Raw
like with
beets.
like oil or salt or whatever it is, and they cook
Yeah.
it too sometimes, but sometimes we eat raw beets and I didn't like it, but it's either suffer and eat it and suffer every time, or just learn to like it and tell yourself you like it and convince yourself you like it. So there's a number of foods that, like Luke, you said, like warm cereal or whatnot. If that wasn't something I had to do, but if it was, I probably would have learned to like it because like, well, they all do it here. I mean, there must be some appeal to it, and just
Yeah.
tell your brain you like it, and off you go.
I got warm Luke, I got warm milk in here. I heated it up. So, you know, in the machine, and I got warm milk in my coffee. Wow. So so was that 90 days that changed your life? Could you say that? 90
Yeah, I
days that
could say every
really
trip I've
changed.
taken is life changing. That's a fair. Every single trip since that trip I've taken has been life changing.
Wow. Fantastic. Yeah, I would have loved to have been sent away. Would have been nice. Good for
So,
you. Congratulations.
my experience with language is obviously I'm learning Portuguese now because of my Brazilian wife. I've learned previously Polish because of my
Hmm.
ex-girlfriend, and I learned French at school. And I was inspired to learn more French because of my really hot French teacher. That she'd started the after-school badminton class, and I didn't like badminton, but I suddenly liked badminton all of a sudden.
Wow.
Um, I have a question around India. Have you travelled
Sure.
to India and been in your family's region of India?
Yep. I have.
Because we early on in this podcast, one of the early episodes, we wanted to try to dispel myths, and
Hmm.
one of the myths that I have about India is, maybe it's a myth, maybe it's true, we don't know, is that if you travel in India, like a foreigner traveling in India, and you eat the food, you're almost guaranteed to be sick.
Yeah, it's probably gonna happen at some point.
So that's a
It's quite possible. I mean, no, there's things you can do, there's precautions you can take to minimize the chances of that happening. And so it doesn't necessarily have to happen, but you know, it can happen for sure. That I'm not sure if that is a myth because you've got some good odds. There's some decent odds of that happening. Um,
And that would be an us thing, or that's an India thing. In other
well, it's
words,
just that the sanitation of their food is just different.
okay,
There's different bacteria everywhere anyway when you travel, and
right.
um, but of course, there's lots of places you can go where you're. It's just that if you, there's lots of places you can go where you're far less like. See, I think where most people get sick is that they eat something that they probably shouldn't have, and they probably knew they shouldn't have. And if you
Like the
avoid
warm.
that, you most likely should be fine. But sometimes you just get unlucky. So I had the most all my experience of getting sick in India or any country really usually happens when I eat something or drink something that like was perfect. Like when I'm
Give
eating
us
the
an
risky
example.
things, I'm fine, and then I eat the safe thing and I'm not, which is
Oh
always
wow.
very strange to me.
Can you
Um,
give us an
but
example of safe and risky?
sure, yeah, absolutely. So eating off of if you're gonna eat off a street vendor who you're like, how is he washing his hands and he's making it all up? Like that's you're on the riskier side there. But if you go to a proper restaurant where everything's kind of clean and sanitary, like you should be fine.
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
You
in New York
should be
City,
okay. Yeah.
in New York City, you can eat a hot dog, or for some people call it a dirty dog or a water dog. It's just a hot dog, but it's in that big vat of water, and it's in there all day long. I don't know. Nobody knows. There's like 30 hot dogs in there, and the guy sticks in a fork and go, I don't know, is that the freshest hot dog? Is that the oldest hot dog? I don't know how long that dog has been in the water, but he puts
Yeah,
it in
I
the
think
bun, and
honestly, like
I never
there's
get
I think
sick.
there's a couple of I think one of the big factors is just that when you're in a different place, and this is not there's just different bacteria. And it's not a bad thing. Like if you just go to like
Right.
France, like there's just different stuff in the air in general and different stuff in
Got
the
it.
food. Is just
Sure.
you know, and then you're
Interesting.
kind of tired and you're jet lagged and so your immune system's
Right.
compromised and
Right.
like it's not just like oh my god the food's no it's not that there's like a lot of factors like there's a huge time difference from Canada to India for example you're jet lagged when you get there you're tired you're bouncing around
Mm.
cities there's maybe one city has a higher pollution level when you're there so your body's dealing with that and then you go and have this one meal that maybe should have been fine and then but because you had all these things like you know what I mean like there's a lot of factors
Right. Sure.
but
Sure. Have you been sick all over the world? We've never asked anybody that on the show. Have you been sick everywhere? Is there any place you've made it where you didn't get sick at all? I know it's
no
not
probably
really why we
not I've
have you on
probably
the
gotten
show.
sick everywhere.
Okay.
I've
Like
gotten sick in
vile.
France, gotten sick. Germany, maybe I didn't, but Germany I was there for a pretty short time. But no, I actually think I did. I think I did actually. Yeah, probably. Most places I've been probably got sick. Yeah, it's
Like when you
normal.
say sick, like tummy ache, or like you're in the bathroom, close the door, and maybe
Most of the
you know,
time it's mild to medium.
mm, okay.
But I've had a couple. You know what's actually interesting? Like this is probably a comfort to most people. Like out of all the places I've been to, I've only really been like hyper sick, where it's like, wow, I'm sick. Probably just like two or three times. Once
Okay.
was Mexico, and I was like vomiting for 24 hours or whatever. Like it was not good.
As a
So that was
result
rough.
of, but as a result of what? You were
That's
sick
the
as a
weird thing.
result.
Actually, like there's only one thing I really ate. Two things I ate rather. One is a quesadilla. Sorry, was it quesadilla? It was a quesadilla. One is a quesadilla, and one was like kind of this toast with bread. Or sorry, toast with beans on it. Just kind of beans on toast thing. So one
From
of
a
the two.
vendor, from a street vendor or a store? Do you
No, no,
remember?
no. Like a proper, like decent. Like I know where to eat. I go to these places. I know how
Right.
to generally speak. That's why I generally don't get sick. I generally don't get really sick because I know roughly where to eat.
Right. Right.
But I don't know what happened. Like I just got unlucky. So that was one. I
Okay.
got
Okay.
hyper sick in Peru. Like oh my, that was rough. And that was something I think that happened from again something I just got unlucky. Like I was pretty careful. And then once I got medium sick in India, but not crazy. And then
Okay.
mild sick all the time because I'm there for 2 months. So like or a month or two or three. So you get mild sick. That's just normal colds and whatever. But
Right.
really,
Right.
really sick, just a handful of times, really.
All right. It's good.
so in Peru, you got sick in Peru, but is that not related? That could not be related to altitude sickness? Or
No,
was
no,
it
no.
food
I
related?
I had one of two things that made me sick. I just don't know which one it was. It was either a hot chocolate that my friend made me, or something I ate on a bus. Like it was like a proper bus, like a kind of intercity bus on the way to my friend's city. Is one of the two, and I was wow. That might be some of the worst stomach pain I felt in my life.
Wow. All right.
That
Wow.
was really, 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 really bad. I couldn't get off the floor. I was like, it's paralyzed in pain.
Wow.
That was awful. That was awful.
That was awful.
Yeah.
Look, we've never discussed this on the show. We've never brought it up to anybody about their illnesses while we're traveling. And we just did a show on risks. And we did talk about food, but we didn't talk about getting sick from food. My wife tells me I have an iron constitution. I can eat almost anything, and I never get sick from food. I don't get headaches. I don't get it's just
Yeah.
been crazy. And
I think
and
I
she'll
have
take
that too, to an extent. Like I think because I don't. Out of all the travels I've had, I've only had like a few really sick experiences.
right.
Only a
Yeah.
few.
Yeah, and she's always going into the refrigerator, ready to throw food out. She'll sniff it. She goes, "Oh, I'm throwing this out." I go, "No, I got it. Put it in the microwave. Whatever's in there, I'm gonna kill it with microwaves, and I eat it." And it's amazing. She goes, "I can't believe you never get sick." I said, "Don't worry about it. I'm gonna save it. One day there's gonna be one really bad situation, so just get ready." But until then, I apparently, knock on this microphone. I have immunity. I never get sick, but but I haven't really traveled around well, I've traveled around. I was in the Philippines and Italy, and so I've never. I got sick when I was younger. When I was really younger, I couldn't travel by car, and I got sick all the time, and the heat would affect me, and all that stuff. But I'm 61 now, so it's been about 45, 50 years. I've been good. I'm ready to go for more. I'm ready to be an exchange student and go live in somebody's house and eat their food. But thanks for sharing that. That's good. And a lot of people don't want to admit that they've been sick. Little humility.
I've never been sick when I've travelled. Never.
Never. Even that plane ride you just took? It was
It was scary, but I wasn't feeling
Okay.
sick after. It was
okay.
the only time I was in any injury. It's just me being clumsy on holiday.
Right. So, so you teach language, right? You have this business. Is there? So, what can you recommend to people as far as? I mean, they say the earlier you are in your life, the sooner you learn a language, the easier it is to. Obviously, being 60, learning Spanish via Duolingo is helping me with vocabulary, but it's not really helping me with, speech, everyday conversational language. So is that something you concur with? The earlier you start, the better and more conversational, obviously.
Not entirely. Not
Okay.
entirely. In the extremes, yes. So if you start when you're a newborn and you're born in like Italy or something, yes, you've got the advantage over anyone. You've got it. You're gonna be good. You'll learn Italian. But
Right.
when you start to compare like a 40-year-old to a 60-year-old, or a 30-year-old to a 60-year-old, or a 70-year-old to a 20-year-old, like now it's not. It's more debatable. It's much more debatable.
Really?
Yeah, it starts
It's
to
not
get
too
more
late.
debatable. Yeah.
All right. And is there a language that you think is the easiest? Is English? Okay, so you went to Mandarin.
Yeah.
Are there people that go to English and like, oh man, English
So
can be
here's
hard.
here's like a really good general rule of thumb. The
Okay.
more similar a language is to a language you already know, the easier it
Okay.
tends to be. Good general
Sure.
rule of thumb. So Mandarin is difficult for an English speaker because it's so foreign for us. But if you speak Cantonese and you go learn Mandarin, you've got a significant advantage. Even Japanese to Mandarin, they're different, of course they are, but you've got a significant advantage
Sure.
over me or any of you. Like, that's significantly going to be easier. If we try to learn Spanish versus someone who speaks, I don't know, like Mandarin tries to learn Spanish, we've got a significant advantage. A third of the words, roughly speaking, we already kind of recognize. Like, oh, that sounds kind of like train, tren. Oh, okay, well, it's not the same, but, or we've heard agua at some point in our life, or dos cervezas,
Sure.
por favor. We've heard something like this. It's kind
Right.
of around, right? So we have a bit of a leg up in that sense. So
Let
that's
me-
like a
let
good
me-
general rule of thumb. There's not necessarily languages that are inherently easier or harder, not necessarily. It has more to do with similarity to something you already know.
Right. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Spanish, I find on the Duolingo, it's so funny. Some words like inglés. All right, English is English. Okay, there you go. But then other words, the Spanish language, they just make up something so. What is it with credit card? Um, what's the? I forget. Do you know the Spanish word for credit or credit card?
Yeah,
What is that?
una tarjeta Visa, una tarjeta de
There.
crédito, una así.
There was something else. Maybe it's not that, but there was some words. There was. I'm starting to go. Wait a minute. I don't understand. How does train trend, right? And how is English Inglés? And then other words, they just like make up. It's like this has nothing to do with anything. And so I don't know how nerdy you are with that, but have you gone deeper into language and like, when they say this is from the Greek, it's from the Roman, it's
Hmm.
from this. Do you go that deep, like spelling bee
Yeah,
deep?
to an extent. Some people go deeper than I do. Yeah. My big focus, especially for the past 18 months, and
Hmm.
probably for the next few years, I would imagine at least, is on guaranteeing fluency.
What was that again?
Guaranteeing fluency.
Guaranteeing
Or getting
fluency.
close to guaranteeing fluency, yeah.
So as a teacher, you want to
Yep.
guarantee
Yeah,
fluency
so if
to your
someone
student.
takes classes, so one of the best analogies would be a university or college. If you go sign up for your bachelor's degree, you know it's a 4-year program, you know the course load, you know if you do the homework, you go to class, you have a reasonably high chance of getting your degree. Now, you might get a higher mark than I do, but if we both go to class, do the homework, we both have a reasonable chance of getting our degree. So I would like to create something like that for languages. Hey, like here's the program. It takes 2 years, takes 3 years, whatever it is, right? To reach this level, it takes this long. This level takes this long. Here's the process. Yes, some people get there faster, some a little slower. Some people have a little bit easier time, some people harder time. But roughly speaking, by and large, here's kind of a program that, roughly speaking, seems to work for the majority of people. And yeah, and that doesn't exactly it does exist in certain ways, but I would say there's no public facing program that is accessible to the masses that does that.
Interesting. Good for you.
Hmm.
Wow. Keep on working on it.
So
Yeah. I would like to have some
how
fluency. Go ahead, Lou.
how long do you think it would take for one of us, me or Dave, to because I'm a casual language learner. I don't like study it hours a day and stuff like that. I'm on Duolingo the same as Dave, but I also have a reference point with my wife. But how long do you think it would learn a casual learner to be fluent in a language?
Hmm. Yeah, so the numbers that I'm working with now, I'll give you two answers that actually. I'll give you one answer, which is the more traditional answer. To reach a full level of fluency, so not like conversational, but like real, full, proper fluency, right? For a language like Spanish, I believe the number is 695 class hour. Actually, I'll pull it up because I have it on computer. It's something like, I'll actually give you the exact number. Here we go. So Spanish, you said, correct?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I'm learning
Spanish, for example,
Portuguese in
according to the
baby swimmers.
foreign, yeah, so 552 to 690 class hours plus homework would be one answer to that question. And that's just from the Foreign Service Institute in the US. They're one of the places you can look for data on how long it takes to learn certain languages. So one answer would be, well, 552 to 690 class hours plus roughly an equivalent amount of homework, let's say. So double that plus, if you add the homework in, perhaps. That's one answer to that question, which is a lot. So if you kind of break out how much time you're dedicating and such, you can kind of map out how long that would take. Another answer to that question would be looking at, for example, a baseline approach. Baseline is a company that teaches Spanish and perhaps Portuguese as well. I can't remember, but anyway, like a baseline style approach where within like a month or within a couple of months you're conversational. It's intensive. It's a couple hours a day, but you're
Right.
conversational, and it's a very good price point for what they offer. There's along that vein. There's a company called Fluent in 3 months, and they also try and get you conversational within a few months. So there's that. There's those answers. What I'm working on now, and what it looks like so far with the early data that we have, but it's too early to say definitively. The early data we have is it looks like you can reach a fluent level in about 200 hours of classes, which is a lot. It is a lot, but it's also not a lot. So if you're doing like 2 hours a week, let's say, something
Yeah.
like that, it's like 2 years.
Yeah.
which is a lot. It's not like a month. It's not 6 months, but it's like 2 years for like an advanced level in a language is pretty reasonable in my mind.
Yeah.
Think about how long
That's
it took
also,
to learn English. Like,
yeah. Right, exactly. But that's all subjective. When you say proper, that's kind of subjective. You're proper.
you're right.
Unless you have a definitive criteria.
I do.
I'd love to hear it.
I
And
do.
then there's, oh, you do?
I do. I think
Okay,
I'm the
what is
first
that?
person who's defined it.
Let's do it. Share it with us.
Sure. So I'll give. So there's the traditional way of measuring fluency is called there's actually a few, but one of the more common ones is called the Common European Framework of Reference, CEFR, is what it's short for, and they have a 6-level scale, and they've kind of defined what fluency is. Now, it's very good. The what I don't like about it is that they use words to describe fluency. So they'll say something like, can use words and phrases to address needs of a concrete type. And you're like, well, I understand those words, but I can't put my fingers on that. So what I've been working on and what I've done, I have a draft version on, is actually defining fluency with numbers. So numerically defining it, so it's very cut and dry and analytical. So as an example, it's not the only criteria, but one criteria, for example, is looking at your grammatical accuracy. And you calculate that by saying, in how many words do you say? Let's say you said 100 words. How many of your words were right? How many of them were wrong? If 100 out of 100 are right, that's 100%. If 0 out of 100 are right, that's 0%. If 50, then it's 50%. Like to look at, and that gives you a cut and dry, non-debatable percentage on what your grammatical accuracy would be. And there's a number of different criteria that myself and my team, we've developed, and we're continuing to work on. We're not done yet. We just have a draft version so far. So it's been 18 months, and I think before you can definitively say that something, when you make a statement like I want to guarantee fluency, that's a pretty big statement.
Sure.
And the only way to actually be able to stand behind that statement is to say, look, we have 2,000 people, or like, I don't know what the number is, but a lot of people that have gone through this, and we have the data on average of how much people progress over what time periods. That's the only way you can actually stand behind such a statement. So we don't have enough of that yet. So even right now, I'm looking for students to come on on a pay what you want. I call them pay what you want private classes. Tell me a number, I will say yes and let you take classes for that number. You tell me $1 for all I care. Tell me a number, I'll figure it out and make it work. Let's figure it out until we have no space, obviously. Just because we need more data to see how much people progress.
Wow. Oh, so, and that's interesting. I mean, it's a great offer because I'm studying Spanish because I want to go. I don't know if you ever heard of the Caminos. Ever heard of the Caminos?
Yeah.
In Spain? So I want to walk a Camino, and you know, I want to be able to, get a room. Where's the bathroom and the table for two?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So you get it. So that's my fluency is subjective. I want to be able to walk that Camino for whatever it is, 500 kilometers, and be able to converse. And I don't want to speak in English if I don't have to. And I think they would appreciate it, when I'm in Spain to do that. And Luke you're studying Portuguese, right, Luke?
Yeah.
Right. And because your wife is from Brazil and you want to, converse with the family and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's, I think we're both up for it. I know I'm up for it.
Cool.
We could discuss that after, but I would love to be a part of that study and all that stuff. Yeah, so we'll talk about it after the
Camino, then it's actually one of my tutors lives in a town that's on the Camino. So.
Oh, there you go.
Like when you pass by, you can just say, "Hey, how are you?" Like you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely do that. And one of the problems with Duolingo is because there's not enough conversational, back and forth in there. It's not interactive. But the other thing is there was a period of time where Duolingo just went way off the rails, and they got cows talking. Like there's like characters. I get the human, and then the cow was like saying the cow was wearing a dress or sweeping the floor. I'm like, listen, I need Duolingo Camino. I just want to train, bus, taxi, food. I don't feel good. Water, I need to know that. But there's other stuff. They went crazy for a while. And I'm assuming they were studying the algorithm, whatever they were doing, and then they stopped it. Then they went back to normal conversation. So I don't know if that was just my natural path because they're tracking with the AI how I'm doing. But then they finally got back to it. I would show my wife and go, look at this. Why is a cow wearing a pink dress? It makes no sense. Why would I? And they know I'm a man because my name is on the thing. I'm not going to wear a pink dress. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I don't want to, pink dress shame anybody. in this particular environment that we live in. But anyway, so what I'm saying is like it was weird for a while. Luke, I don't know if you're experiencing that because you're just starting with Duolingo. Are you
Yeah.
experiencing any strangeness with the characters or
They
anything?
do have some strange phrases, like the animal's eating the insect. Why do I need to know that?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
The
not going
animals
to use
eating.
that in a conversation.
Yeah. Azren, if I knew you were going to be a guest a year ago, I would have saved all these screenshots. I said, look at this. This is so. Well, let me ask you a question. Is this something that you are hearing me saying? Oh, wait a minute. That does make sense. You should learn how to say the cow is wearing a pink dress or whatever animal is eating an insect. Does it? What would you recommend? I mean, is that something that sounds odd to you, or is that something that seems right to you? That makes sense as a
Yeah,
teacher?
in general, no.
Okay.
In general, no. I understand why they do it. It makes sense to me. In general,
Okay.
no.
Why does it make sense to you?
It
That's
makes
what I'm
sense for
always
two
curious.
reasons. One is that they're a marketing machine. So by doing that, everyone talks about it. I don't know if that's why they would do it, but that does make sense to me. The other thing is that um, when you have ridiculous sentences, you are more likely to remember them, like the words in them and such. So
That's
there's
true.
that factor as well. Yeah, so I get it. I don't think it's it's just it is what it is. Yeah.
For my practical purposes, I don't need to know about the cows and pink dresses. I need to know, I wish Duolingo would let me toggle some switches. I mean, if you're going to
Sure.
create an app one day, whatever, if I could just toggle some switches. I'm a man, certain age, and this is where I'm going. I'm going to Spain, and the Spanish in Spain a little bit different than the Spanish in New York City, right? Two
Mm-hmm.
different. So I want to. I don't. I don't want to fool anybody that they think, oh, this guy he's fluent, but I just want to be comfortable. And I don't want them to strain to, I already have an accent, New York City accent. I don't want it to make it even more difficult for them. So, and it'd be more fun for me to be able to walk around and just be, hey, how you doing? Buenos dias. And just have not a deep conversation about psychology or maybe the local football team, or whatever, the food, the steak.
One way you can think about it is here's one possible way to think of it. Think of it like a triangle with three levels. So level one is when you're getting introduced to a language, and apps, as a general rule of thumb, is a nice level one strategy. Get your feet wet, kind of try, but that's not going to get you. Generally speaking, it's not going to get you very far. A level two strategy would be something like that actually utilizes other speakers. So it could be a language exchange, it could be a tutor, it could be something where you're incorporating other people. And then you're still doing your apps or textbooks or whatever other self-study resources you're using. But now you're mixing, and that's like a nice level two strategy, which gets you a heck of a lot further. And then level three, which is, not accessible to everyone, but something that's highly immersive will always be something that'll be very sign up for you go to Mexico and do a 2-week intensive course, or you go to or if you do something like Baseline, I mentioned the company earlier, like they have a pretty intensive program that's very, very effective from what I've never taken it, but from what I've heard and what I've seen, it seems like pretty sound. Or, like my trip to France for 3 months is the ultimate version of something that's
Right.
highly, highly immersive and intensive. But you kind of have those three levels, just apps plus incorporating other people, tutors, things like that.
Right.
Or then the most
Immersive.
intensive would be something highly immersive.
Yeah.
So if you're
My
in
guess is
Appland, that's a good way to start, but you want to kind of move your way up that ladder, at least to some degree.
Absolutely. My guess is by the time I'm done with the Camino, 500 kilometers later, I'll be an expert in Spanish. I'll be fluent enough to do it again. I could do it in reverse.
Yeah, you'll
And I'll
learn a
know
lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would learn a lot. But by that time, it's back to America and back to this. So, but I want to be a little bit more prepared. But it's good. It's good that this is a good timing to have met you and do that. What about you, Luke?
Yeah. I have another question. Well, in fact, it's a stat. I like to do my research on this podcast, and I like to bring up stats and do a lot of research. So I compared, well, first of all, Canada is the second biggest country in the world. And
Population-wise?
I compared
Population-wise or area?
Area size. Yeah.
Okay.
So I compared Canada with the UK on a few stats. So the populate. No, wait. How to phrase this? So Canada is the 8th least densely populated country in the world as well. So they have a lot of area, but not a lot of people. So compared to the UK, the area size Canada is 41 times bigger than the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So UK would be 2% of the size of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But the population size is going to surprise you. So Canada's population is 40 million and the UK's is 67 million with a lot less size. So that doesn't make sense to me.
Mm.
But obviously the Canada's like with a lot of forests and a lot of mountains and lakes. So it's inhospitable areas, I guess,
Sure.
for their size.
It's all cold. Like the
I love
northern
cold.
half of the country is quite difficult to. It's harder
Barren.
to. There's just
Sure.
less up there, you know. Yeah, so like the northern half of the country is. I mean, people live there, of course, but most of our. I saw a map once of our population like density. It's all concentrated around like a very very few places, really.
Right.
That's where the cities
Sure.
are. That's where the jobs are. That's where people live. That's where they're like so.
And
Yeah.
for the stats are that in Canada, there's on average 4 people to every kilometre.
Could be, yeah. Sounds about right. It's not very, it's not very dense. Definitely not very densely populated. And you know, when I travel to different, most of the places I go to are much more densely populated than Canada, and it's personally I quite like it. Personally, I like going to places that are more densely populated. There's something about I like living here where it's less densely populated, but for travel purposes, yeah, throw me in Beijing or somewhere where it's hyper crowded.
That would stress me out to be in like massive traffic jams and a lot of like thousands of people. You know, I like traveling anywhere, but I'd go to India, I'd go to anywhere, but for that 1 week I'd be stressed out, I'd be frustrated with the traffic and and everything.
Look, aren't you coming to New York? I thought you said you're going to New York.
Yeah, I want to go to New York, yeah.
Oh, get ready.
I want to come there too. I can't wait for the whole energy of like I like going to highly densely populated areas that are very, there's that energy in the air. And
Sure.
New York, like I've always wanted to go there. Just maybe I'll go there this year. Actually, you know what? I might go there this year. Might be decided.
Wow.
Like, I just decided. You know what? I've been thinking of where to go this year. I was thinking Colombia. I was thinking somewhere in South America. Maybe like Mongolia. I was like maybe there. But New York, I can go to New York. Why not?
New York City, Manhattan.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You've never been.
I'd
Well,
love
you're more
to.
than welcome to. You're more than welcome to call me. I'll give you some nice. Do you know anybody in the area?
Probably.
Okay.
If I'd have to just ask around. I probably know someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like now I
That's
know
a good
you,
idea.
worst case, but
Absolutely. Well,
not
I'm
worst case, but
upstate.
that's not what I mean. But
Yeah. Worst case. No, you're right. It's fine.
you're my
It's fine.
last resort.
That's okay. No, you could whatever in the order is fine. That's great. I'd love to help. Listen, I love showing off New York. I love telling people
Yeah,
about
okay.
it. And I'm native New Yorker, Brooklyn. I've slept around all over the 5 boroughs, so I know a little bit about it, and I can help you out. And I only have really positive things to say, nothing negative. And we'll keep you out of trouble. I'm not like one of those kids in France that you were friends with that got you biking all over and getting you in
Yeah,
trouble.
New York just sounds like I just love the.
You'd love
I
it.
heard I love places where there's just so much happening in one little area. Like you could literally India's kind of like that too. Like if you go to
Yeah.
you're walking on the road, and you stand there for 5 minutes, and you will see 12 things that just blow your mind while you're standing there.
Absolutely.
Like amazing things, maybe some sad things. You'll see some surprising things, and you'll just see stuff. You're like, huh,
Right.
that's 6 people on a motorbike.
Right.
Wow,
Right.
that's
Right.
that's remarkable.
Right.
You'll see like a camel. You're like, that's a camel.
Right.
And that's a car, and then there's like whoa. And New York, no camels on the road, of course, but
Not yet.
everything I've heard about New York is there's like an energy, there's like this kind of energy in the air, and there's lots of people, and there's lots of stuff happening, and there's the history, and there's the culture, and there's just so
All true.
much there. It's such a rich area in that way.
All true. And if you live there all your life, you still haven't seen it all.
Mhm.
It's like every day is another day, and you go, well, that's a new one on me. I never saw that. And it's been a long time since I've lived down there full time, but when I go back and visit, it's just never ending. There's always something. Well, never saw that street before. In fact, I just had lunch with somebody. Manhattan is like a rectangle, right? It's an island. Manhattan's an island, and if you go all the way to the east, it's like First Avenue. You go all the way to the west, it's 11th Avenue, right? But nobody knows. It's a very rare trivia question. There's actually 6th and a half Avenue. There's a
Really?
half avenue in between Fifth Avenue. No, between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, there's a small area, a couple of blocks, and there's a street sign. It's legitimate. It's not a joke. It's not a gimmick. It's 6th and a half Avenue. And I just had lunch with somebody from New York, grew up in Brooklyn like me, and we were talking about different things growing up. And I said, hey, did you know? Here's a trivia question for you. Did you know? It's the truth. If somebody asks you, is there another avenue that we don't know about? Yeah, 6.5. And I have the street sign. I have the screenshot and everything. It's legitimate, but
Yeah,
a lot of people
that's,
don't know
that's
about it.
interesting because so what I like about New York is, well, number one, like the fact that things are always changing and you've never seen it all. Like that sounds amazing to me.
Right.
Like that sounds so cool.
Yeah.
And the second thing is just around. Well, actually, go back to that first one. Like, that's why I like to travel so much because I like the novelty of it, and the fact that you can have novelty in one city is so cool. But then the second thing is also that there's kind of a lot of the places I go to. The word I'm going to use is kind of they're often a bit rougher. Now they're not rougher in the sense of like you're getting mugged all the time, but like most of the places I go to, you can't just walk around with your headphones in your ears and just like not pay any attention at all. Like something will happen if you just are not paying attention. Like in Peru, I remember when I went to Peru, for example. I don't know if it's different now because when I was there, it was quite a long time ago. But this is pre-Uber era, and I remember in Peru, like one of the first things I learned was about taxi safety, how to spot a fake taxi that's not,
Right.
you know, how to spot a real taxi, and what to do if you're in a taxi that's going to rob you. And what I was like it's something about that where it's safe. Like you're perfectly fine. You're going to be fine. But if you're not paying attention, you might not be fine. Like I kind of like that.
Right.
I don't want to go to like a war zone.
Right.
That's not what I want to do. But something where you
No.
got to just like pay attention a little bit, and there's like people around, and that guy's a bit sketchy. Like kind of like that I like that. And
Yeah.
from what I've heard about New York, depends on where you are, of course, what part. But I've heard that you have that, maybe less now, I suppose. But I feel like that flavor, that is I've heard anyway. That's kind of at least the roots of New York, and now perhaps it's changed a bit. But I kind of like that.
Well, it's ebb and flowed. It's been worse. It's been better, but you always have to keep your head on a swivel, but not be in fear. Just respect it, be aware, and yeah, I could walk around with my headphones on, but I sort of have an idea of where I'm at and where I'm going. But this scams, you know, we've talked about scams on the show. We've talked about danger. We talked about risk. So where to eat and where to walk and what time and who to say hello to and all it's quite the adventure. And if you're naive, you're probably going to fall prey to a problem, you know. But if you're experienced in travel, you'll probably have a good time. But I hope you do it. I hope you do it soon because it's great. I mean, now's as good as time as any. You know, all post COVID, everybody's ready for business, and now that we're going into the spring, into the summertime, definitely a good time. I definitely would recommend better weather. You don't want to go in the winter, really, because that limits you a lot.
Right.
But I know you're used to the cold.
But still, I understand. Yeah, I get it.
You want to do the spring and summer or the fall. Fall is beautiful with the leaves turning. But I'm sure you have that in Calgary already. You know, you have the orange leaves.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, well, but hey, can I ask you a question? What is the furthest north you've been in Canada? Because you are pretty much close to the state of Washington in the United States and Montana. So you're on the lower third of Alberta. And then there's Edmonton, we know that. But how far north have you gone?
You know, not that far north, frankly. Edmonton might be the furthest north I've been.
Okay. Have
Possibly.
you thought? See, I'm also, I'm a travel nerd. So have you thought to yourself, hey, one day me and my buddies, we're gonna get in the car, we're just gonna go north. We're just gonna go and go and go until the ice road. Then we turn around until they tell us to stop. We're gonna go.
I've considered it. I had a friend who did something like that maybe 5 years ago. He did that.
Really?
He went up. He had a destination, but yeah, he drove up to Yukon.
Yeah. That's a whole other part of Canada. So. The Yukon territories to the west.
I don't know where he went in Yukon anymore. I can't remember, but.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I know I'd be in big trouble with my car. I would push it. And I've had the junkiest cars imaginable. I could just see me and my buddies. Let's go north. You know, we have $30 in our pocket, whatever it is. This is get some Slim Jims and a couple of, some water and just go and see what happens. But all right, I was just curious. But there you go. You got some destinations ahead of you there. Some excitement. You're still young. You got plenty of time.
So we're getting to that time when it's nearly time to wrap the podcast up.
Go ahead, Luke.
But you mentioned Colombia, Azren. So the podcast that we're posting tomorrow has our Colombian guest on. So you should check that out and get some tidbits about Colombia and stuff like that. Yeah. So
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how does
So, yeah.
are you shutting it down, Luke? Do you want to ask Azren about Calgary, about his business and all that?
Yeah. Tell us more about your business, Azren. Yeah.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, the main project right now is to guarantee fluency, to offer lessons that guarantee it, right? Or that get as close to guaranteeing as one possibly could anyway. That's been one of the big focuses. So it's taking a very scientific approach to make sure that what we're doing really is working and people are actually moving forward and progressing. That's been one of the big focuses. The languages are mostly focused on now are Spanish, French, Italian, Russian, and Mandarin. Those are kind of the main ones.
Great. How many people on your team?
Yeah, there's about 10 in total, with about 7 of them that are working with the new curriculum.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. So do you feel like you're on the leading edge of language? Like this fluency thing is a big deal. I've never heard anybody try to make that claim before, but this is something you're really thinking about.
Well, actually, so what really bugged me, I actually had at one point, I went to screenshots on my computer. I went to every single company I could find that offered language classes, and I screenshotted their homepage. And then I would compare to see if what they said on their homepage actually they deliver on, and no one does. It really bothered me, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. So they'll say, learn a language in 30 days or whatever it is, right? But that's not what they deliver on. So in 2023, I became quite obsessed with what I call success rates. So you can find satisfaction scores. You can find ratings in the App Store, for example.
Right.
But you'll be very hard pressed to find any kind of progress scores or success ratings. You don't find those. For colleges, you will. You'll see graduation rates as an example. You'll see for test scores in public education systems, you'll see what countries or what cities are the highest test scores. You'll see it there. So you can very quickly determine what countries or what regions have better education systems. But for language courses or programs, you don't really see that. And I was like, huh.
Wow.
And like, I know the caliber of people that we have at the Calgary Language Nerds. I know, like, I myself have probably spent $50,000 in my adult life on language classes for like in my adult life, right? So like I've taken a ton of classes. And so like for the teaching practices that we're using, like now it's a bit different, but previously the stuff we're doing, it's not like a lot, like these are often very standard practices. And when I was looking at the results of how much people are progressing, and it wasn't pretty, people are not progressing very much. And I thought, what a waste of time, effort, and resources on everyone's part. People go download the apps, people go pay for the classes, they attend classes, the tutors prep for the classes, the tutors give the homework, they correct the homework. Then there's the administration side, they're paid, they submit their invoices, they're paid for the work. There's all this effort and resources going in. And what's the output? People kind of sort of get better sometimes. What are we doing? It seems like a waste of everyone's time. So I thought I would love to be able to solve that problem, and just for my own peace of mind, say, hey, yes, we have solved it, and at least I know that.
So if I sign up with you, we're gonna get like a baseline, like where's Dave at, and then we're gonna check in where Dave's at down the road, and you'd love to see. Oh, and listen, I'm fascinated by that, because I definitely want to learn Spanish, and I know Luke wants to learn Portuguese, so I can't speak for Luke, but I know we're both on a streak. I think I get notified of your streaks, Luke. I haven't.
Yeah.
I feel silly, like, celebrate Luke's streak. I'm like, it's been 10 days.
It's quite fascinating to me to see. So if you look at how people track their I'm fascinated by how people. So if you change how people track their progress, you'll change if you change how they track their progress, you'll change how fast they progress. So people will track with streaks, with points. They'll track with, if they're taking a class, they'll track by the level of class that they're in.
Yeah.
But the problem is that most metrics that people use don't correlate to fluency at all. They really don't. They just don't correlate, or not very well. So some of the metrics I like to use. So if you're just a language learner, if you're not taking classes with us, then no worries. But if you're just learning on your own, one of my favorite metrics is anxiety levels. How nervous
Right.
are you to talk to someone? The more confident you feel, the more fluent you're becoming. That's one very easy one to do a gut check. How nervous am I? Ooh, I'm very nervous. Okay, you're probably not that fluent. And the more
Right.
that drops, the more that anxiety drops to talk to real people, the more fluent you're getting. That's what I personally use for French and Spanish, other languages. I take tests and stuff too, so I have that as well. But really, the real thing I'm using inside is, when do I not feel scared to just talk to people anymore? That's my real internal check. Another
100%.
way you can check as well is through any kind of formalized testing. That's always another way to do it if you wanted to. Through, like, there's lots of organizations for any major language like Spanish or Portuguese or whatnot. There's always some kind of exam you could take. Spanish, the most accessible one for Spanish, for example, is Siele, Siele. There's another one called Dele, which is more popularly known, but Siele is easier to take, so you can do it online. It's not as expensive. It does more dates. It's a bit easier. But those are two ways. But streaks and stuff, they don't correlate. If you're really aiming at fluency, but not everyone is.
Correct.
In fact, the majority of people are not. They're not, is what I've been surprised to find. Most people don't aim at fluency. That's not their intent. But if you are really aiming at it, then you want to check how you're measuring your progress. Because you change the measurement, you change the results.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Listen, I've done two things in my life that were hard. Truck driving. I'm a truck driver. So going forward, easy. Backing up and the trailer going this way, like it took a while. Like, you really got to, you got to get one with the tractor and the trailer and the left and the right, the mirrors. And I was amazed how long it took me and the other people I was studying with. And the other thing is boxing. I've done some boxing in my life, and my trainer told me if I never fought like a sanctioned fight, I just train. But what he said to me is, if you're in the corner and you have any fear, that reduces your energy, because if this is your energy and this is your fear, then you have that much less energy. If your fear is like this, you're going to go in and you're going to be like this. You're going to be covering up right away. But if you go in and you're Mike Tyson, or old school Mike Tyson, and you've got all this confidence, you've got no fear, you're going to win, or you're going to be very, very competitive. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and actually, so I did some jujitsu for a while, and I came with a really interesting realization. So any complex physical task, martial arts like boxing, like with highly, not like riding a bike, although maybe you could, but not just riding a bike, but like something that's highly complex, where there's like a lot of time and more than one people involved, like a boxing or something, where there's really a ton of stuff to learn that's never ending, really. Really, and something like boxing or a lot of martial arts, like jujitsu, is highly technical. Like, there's any kind of technical, remarkably comparable to learning languages. Remarkably comparable, and the same. If you just pretended if you have experience with boxing as an example, if you have experience with that, if you just pretended that learning a language was all the same rules you did to learn boxing will apply to learning a language, except the language is not, you're not punching someone, but it's the same.
You won't get hurt.
But it's the same stuff. If you
Right.
treat language like a history class or something, you're not in good shape. But if you treat it like a physical skill, like, how would I learn to dance? Oh, I would like actually how would I learn to dance salsa? Okay, I'd actually find a partner and I would like learn the steps. I'd practice with them. Well, same thing. Okay, how would you learn to speak Spanish? Well, you got to find someone, you got to find a partner, and you got to like dance, aka talk to them and like really make the mistakes and yes, learn the rules and how to say words, but then you got to try and use it with them, and you're way better off if you compare it to a complex physical skill than like a school subject.
Totally agree. And how can they find go ahead, Luke.
So we're almost ready to wrap it up, and Azren will put all your details in the show notes, your YouTube channel and your language company as well. So just to tell the listener, push that subscribe, like the podcast, share it, and stick around for more.
Amazing. Well, thanks for having me on.
Azren, it was great to talk to you. And
Likewise.
Stay right there. Don't go anywhere just yet. We're going to say goodbye here, but just stick around.
Okay.
Thank you, Azren. It was very interesting and very, very good to hear your story.
Thank you. Well, thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Luke, you stopped the
So
recording? You did stop. It
I'm
says
going to press it
recording.
now. Yeah,
Yeah, do it now.
I'm going to